Another company that has been rumored for the past like 2 years or so to be bought by Sony is Konami, I believe. People feel that Konami would be a good addition to Sony, but the thing about Konami is, for the most part, they don't really have any really big franchises in comparison to other video game companies. And what I mean by that, you look at like some of the best video game like series that they got going. One of them is Metal Gear, the other one's Castlevania. Even though like Castlevania has gotten its own anime on Netflix, for the most part, I don't think Castlevania has really um I don't know. It hasn't sold as much as it should have for the most part, even though the franchise is very popular. I think it's one of those like franchises that has like a cult following for the most part because a lot of people like the whole story with Dracula and the Belmonts and all that other stuff. And then you look at Metal Gear. The Metal Gear series look like, for the most part, it's dead because the director who's been there since like the 80s, he's not there anymore. Um, we have no idea if Hideo Kojima's ever going to return to Konami. I heard he's actually supposed to be working on like a new game like sometime in the future. And and yeah, for the most part, like another Metal Gear game wouldn't be the same without the director. And even though we're supposed to be getting a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, I don't think it's going to be quite the same. And I don't think any other game, if there's ever a Metal Gear Solid 6, it's not going to be the same as the older entries from the 2000s. But yeah, should Sony buy Konami? Um, the fact that they chose Bungie over Konami kind of says a lot because they know that Bungie was like the developer for the Halo series back in the 2000s, and they know that Bungie could help them create a lot of high-profile shooter titles that can draw them more money. And you look at Castlevania, like for the most part, Castlevania back in the 80s and the 90s, it started off as it's like a side-scrolling like platform type of game, and it's just like, the platform genre is out, and I know like the Lords of the Shadow game from the early teens. Um, I believe the first one actually did okay. The second one didn't do too good, and I think that was among the last that we got to see in relation to Castlevania games. But for the most part, I don't really know anything that would be beneficial to Sony, or anything that Sony would want from Konami in terms of buying them, other than like the football series, the Pro Evolution Soccer series, which has been around since like the mid 90s. I think that's one of the best things that Konami has going for them, but I don't think Sony is necessarily too interested in putting out high profile sports titles because they know the whole action adventure and RPG route is working for them with their games, because a lot of their best-selling games have been like action adventure titles, and that just seems to be what's in. And for the most part, it doesn't seem like sports games is as popular as they were back in the 2000s, when gaming for the most part started shifting away from 2D to 3D gaming. And I do feel that Sony, for the most part, even though it seems like they're competing with Microsoft, I do feel that Microsoft doesn't want to compete with Sony as much anymore. Or at least it seems that way, because Microsoft and Xbox want to bring Xbox exclusive titles to the PlayStation 5. So I do feel that I do feel like the console wars is not as intense as it used to be. And it might be one of those deals where, maybe we won't get as many, high profile, um, video game developer, acquisitions later down the line, because it's something that's been, dividing the gaming community for quite some time now. And a lot of people just loved it when you could just buy a third party game and play it on whatever game system you owned or what have you. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't think, Sony should buy Konami. I don't think they have any plans on buying Konami, and I'm not exactly sure if that's something that would make a ton of sense to a lot of people because I don't think Konami has like any franchise that's as popular as like Call of Duty um or like, Fortnite or, what have you. There's a lot more there's more popular video game series out there, and you look at Capcom. I think Capcom and Sega are both against the idea of being bought out by Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo or whoever because they want to remain their own entity and they want to be able to have their games as many third party platform games as they possibly can have it on. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people would go on record and say, Sony buying Capcom would be like pretty cool, but you know, I don't think like if anything, like the best that they can get from Capcom, I would say, is Resident Evil. But even then, it's like the newer Resident Evil titles are not as exciting as the older ones, and and for the most part, it's like the remakes are like the main attractions in relation to Resident Evil. But at the same time, I believe Konami's bringing back the Silent Hill series, and if like Silent Hill 2 remake along with Silent Hill F, if they're massive successes in the future, maybe it's something that can kind of change their mind and make them consider wanting to buy Konami in the future. But I never heard of any plans from Sony or anything like that on them possibly buying out Konami in the future. There've been rumors for a while, like on Reddit and stuff like that, but for the most part, there haven't been any like plans or anything like that. But that's something that could definitely change over time. But it does seem like even though for the most part Konami hasn't really had much going for them during the teens decade, other than like Metal Gear Solid 5, I do feel like this decade could mark a period of revival for Konami, and I do feel that Silent Hill series could definitely put them more in the limelight in the future, and who knows, maybe the Silent Hill games that we get, it's going to be something that exceeds a lot of people's expectations, including the movie that's supposed to be coming out sometime a little bit later this year, but I do feel that at this point it seems like people are sick of high profile video game acquisitions, and after that lawsuit between FTC and Microsoft, I feel like Microsoft is doing everything they can to kind of smooth things over with whoever they can, whether it be with Nintendo, whether it be Sony, and try to prove to the FTC that we're not trying to monopolize anything. We're just trying to do something cool, but it is what it is. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens a little bit later down the line in relation to, I guess, Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo in relation to the console wars.